I want to take the time to discuss with you the Black Swan murder trial.
Welcome to True Crime with Strategic Eyes.
Strategic back again, guys. What's going on? I got a real good show for you guys today. I want to talk about the Black Swan killer. That's right, Ashley Benefield, the former ballerina who killed her ex, or rather her estranged husband. They were still married. They were going through a very tumultuous relationship, off and on again. And there were tons of allegations of domestic violence, domestic abuse. To my knowledge, none of it substantiated, except for some erroneous situation where Doug Benefield, her husband, shot into the ceiling of their kitchen. I never really got to the bottom as to why he did that, but it was discussed in court, and the judge who was presiding over a custody hearing, etc., didn't give it much weight. I want to go ahead and tell you guys, how did this start? Like, where did we come from? How did we get to the moment we are right now, where the Black Swan murder suspect, Ashley Benefield, was found guilty of manslaughter? And was manslaughter enough considering the evidence? Did the jury let her off easy? Should they have convicted her for second-degree murder, which was an option, which is what the prosecution was actually looking for? And what will her eventual sentence be? It looks like she's facing up to 30 years in prison. Some people believe that manslaughter is a lesser charge that may give you less time. It's possible. But in most instances, in most states, you still can get big numbers with a manslaughter charge. So she's facing up to 30 years in prison. But I want to go back to the beginning. I want to walk you through to where we arrive, which is that guilty verdict. Now, who is Ashley? Ashley met Doug Benefield in 2016. At the time, she was 24 years old and he was 54 years old. After 13 days of knowing each other, of courting each other, of dating, they decided to get married. They barely knew each other, ladies and gentlemen. They decided to get married. And that resulted in a very tumultuous relationship that culminated in a pregnancy in 2017. And that's when the beautiful child, their daughter, was conceived. Now, even then, at that point, the drama did not start, or did not stop, rather, in this relationship. In fact, Doug did not even know when his own daughter was born. He knew that the mother was pregnant. He knew Ashley was with child, but she actually hid the birth of their child simply because she did not want Doug to participate in the birth. And Doug did everything that he could do to be in the life of his child, something that we haven't seen other people do. In some of the cases that we cover, we will say no names. We'll leave that for another live. But it all culminated in Ashley shooting Doug in 2020 in her home after he came to her residence to help her move, under the pretext of two things. Number one, that they would move together, not in the same home together, ladies and gentlemen, but they would move to the same city together. No, they would live apart. But that in the process of them living apart in the same city, that they would work on reconciling their relationship. Now, from the testimony that I saw from various people, I believe that Doug was head over heels in love with Ashley. And I don't think that Ashley loved him too much. I think Ashley cared more for what Doug could do for her financially, rather than actually loving Doug as a person, as her husband. They came together, they tried a business venture together, starting the American National Ballet Company, which went defunct before it even took off the ground. It was over. It could not be or would not be a successful business for them. But one guy, I want to play something for you guys, because it's important. During the trial, the prosecution played some of the ruling of the judge that presided over the custody hearing. And I think it's very interesting, it's very telling what that judge had to say about Ashley Benefield. Now, this is a 13-minute long excerpt that the prosecution played during the trial, but I cut it down to 2 minutes and 25 seconds. So don't get me wrong, this whole thing was exciting, was probative, and very, very informative what the judge said, but we are limited on time. So I definitely would encourage you to go and listen to the entire thing for yourself. We'll make sure that we put links for everything inside of the description section. But check this out.
Move forward to the actual presentation that she's had in this courtroom since she entered into this courtroom, the turning on of tears when she thinks it's appropriate, and then we move on to the entire insinuation that there is some type of poisoning going on in this particular case.
Now, I cut this down like I told you guys. So 2 things. Number 1, the judge is not convinced by her ability to cry on the spot. And you see that all throughout the trial, especially during her testimony. She turns on the waterworks to pull that veil over your eyes, to have sympathy for her. And I guess it worked because the jury did hit her with a manslaughter conviction and not a murder in the second way. Clearly, this woman knew she wanted to kill her husband. Clearly, the evidence pointed to that. And 2, during this hearing, this custody battle, she was saying that Doug tried to poison her, and there's no evidence of it. And the judge is going to talk about that. So let's keep going.
There is not a single scintilla of credible evidence that Miss Benefield has ever been poisoned or suffered from any illness of any poison. Court finds that Dr. Hilliard's testimony was suspect. I don't think that the court finds that he reviewed one record appropriately. And in comparison to Dr. Sawyer, I think his testimony, in a word, was bunk. I do find that Dr. Sawyer's testimony was quite informative, and that his information concerning the answered questions that I had, how there were testing for certain metals on and then testing for certain metals that weren't there. And it's most important to this court was the explanation of the misinterpretation or the use of an improper range, which I think even in cross-examination, there was a misunderstanding that there is a range that these metals are in the human body, not just a single number.
So basically, she brought in her own experts to try and testify to the levels of heavy metals that were found inside of her blood. We all have metals inside of us. We all have certain level of toxins in our bodies. And basically, her expert was trying to rewrite science and basically say that the presence of it, period, is an indication of her being allegedly poisoned, when in all actuality, we all have a certain level of all of these types of poisons and toxins and heavy metals, etc., in our body as a result of living in an industrialized society where you drink from plastic cups and you're going to get BPAs in your blood system when you drink from plastic cups, especially if you're the type to mistakenly put that stuff inside of the microwave and heat up your food in it. It's going to leach into your food. It's going to be in your body at low levels. And if you're tested, you're going to see these things. But technically, according to science, if you believe the science, they're not harmful on the levels that they're in. Well, this scientist that they brought up, that her defense brought up during this hearing, was saying that, hey, just the very presence of it shows that somebody's trying to poison her. And that just wasn't the truth. Truth of the matter is, she had normal levels like everybody else, and it was not indicative of somebody trying to do something slick like poison her. So that's what the judge is basically saying at this point. Let's keep going.
So that brings us to the following timeline. I have that in 10/20/2016, there's the respondent goes up there. They're at the respondent's home. Petitioner is up there. He's had back surgery. She moves back into the respondent's home permanently on December 2016. That in about January 2017 through, I'm going to say 5/8/2017, there appears to be a marriage in which there are arguments, but there is still a very committed relationship to the point where they're talking about having a reversal of vasectomy to have a child. That on 5/8/2017, the clear evidence is that there is the vasectomy alteration or reversal, and that from that point they begin to pursue having a child.
Yeah. So this guy was head over heels in love with this woman. It's very sad because, when we listen to his attorney talks about how they finally, the judge gives their ruling. The judge gives him full custody over medical decisions for the child, which is very interesting because that shows that she's somehow negligent in maintaining the child's health, and gave them joint decision on everything else. So it's 50-50, which is basically what Doug wanted. Doug did not want to take this child away from Ashley at all. He just wanted to co-parent. And if he could co-parent with her because he was so attracted to her. She's half his age. I'm sure it's very exciting to be with her as an older man if you're into that kind of stuff. I'm more into the mind and the spirit, but some people are very much into the youth and the pleasure part of it. And it never works out. But hey, human beings rarely listen to the mistakes of others. Sometimes they have to make the mistakes for themselves for them to learn a lesson. Sometimes they don't learn a lesson and they end up dead. Like Doug Benefield, right? But he either wanted to co-parent with her or he wanted to be with her. And if she wanted to be with him, then he was willing to be with her. But if she didn't want to be with him, then he was fine co-parenting. But that wasn't enough for Ashley Benefield. Ashley Benefield just wanted to be a single mother. Ashley Benefield wanted no father of record in her child's life. And the only way to accomplish that was to kill him. So now I want to play for you guys some of her testimony that discusses how this happened. How did it come to pass that Doug Benefield was killed in her home? Let's do it.
Like I said, sometimes he'd be a little rough,
But other than that, he never was physically violent.
He didn't like punch holes in the walls or anything like that, no.
No, she's trying to say that he was physically violent. She's trying to say this was a domestic violence relationship. But understand, I don't know what it is. Some people are just excellent liars. They could lie and not bat an eye, and they'll put their heart and soul into that lie. For some reason, Ashley can't commit to her lies, and it might be conscience. She might have a guilty conscience for what she did to Doug. It might just be she's a bad liar. It might be all types of things. I don't know. I can't get into her brain. But she can't commit to portraying him as an abusive man because he was not. So she's going to be very vague, even though she can easily say, hey, this guy punched me in my face one day. I never reported it. I never took pictures. It is what it is, but he punched me in my face. She could have said that, but she refuses to say it because it never happened. So she's just very vague on the description of this domestic violence that she experienced. Let's keep going.
So when I asked you, has he been violent, you said, well, he didn't punch holes in the walls. Is that what you just said?
That's what I just said, yes, ma'am.
So punching a hole in a wall to you is a definition. When I ask, was he violent? Your definition of that is punching a hole in a wall.
I think that is violent.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay. And you had no intention of dropping that injunction. So you knew on the day of that hearing, he was going to know. Right?
I'm sorry.
You knew that Doug was going to know that you had no intention of reconciling with him.
We had the conversation many times. I think he understood where I was at.
Okay.
And this is a big piece of information here because Doug went to the house to help her move simply because he believed that they were going to reconcile and that they were moving together to this new city. And when you hear his attorney talk about the custody situation that happened long before the murder, he always wanted to please her. Even when he was asking to know when the child would be born, he said, if you're not comfortable with me being there, it's okay, I won't come, but I'd at least like to know when the child is born. Now, the child had already been born by that time when he was having his dialogue with her through his attorneys in the courts, and they would later find out about it. But even then, it wasn't like I want a court injunction that says I get to see the child when the child is born. No, he was always careful to care about what her wishes, her needs were. She did not want Doug to be in this child's life. I believe she purposely called him over to the home to help her move, to start an argument with him, to then try and have a reason to shoot him, under the premise of self-defense. That's my opinion, but let's keep going. Let's hear her talk about it.
Okay. You saw the text messages between you and him, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you agree that those text messages do not indicate that?
It doesn't say we're getting back together, moving in together.
It doesn't say we're not going to reconcile.
I mean, not specifically, no. I wasn't going to argue with him.
If you got your injunction on that day, September 30th, how would you have moved together?
Speculative.
I'll sustain.
What was your plan if that injunction was
Speculative.
granted?
Different question. Overruled.
Objection. Speculative.
No. You can approach.
So if the injunction were granted on that day, what was your plan about moving to Maryland with Doug?
You see like the rapid batting of her eyes? Very, very interesting. Could be a nervous tick. Could be a number of things, but very interesting how she's just rapidly batting her eyes. Rapidly. Let's keep going.
I don't know that I really had a plan. I wasn't even sure whether or not I was going to go through the injunction at that point.
I think she's kind of like trying to bring out the emotion out of her. You see the batting of the eyes, and she's trying to work herself up to get those eyes teary. She's definitely trying to fake cry. Definitely.
Okay, so I want to get to the night that all this happened. So you knew Doug was coming over.
Yes.
You invited him over
Yes.
to help you move stuff in the house,
Well, specifically stuff in the garage, but yes.
stuff in the garage to the truck.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And he came to your house a couple of times. He came and then left and then came back again.
Yeah, I believe he came twice that day.
And there is a gate to your community.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's at the gate, you had to let him in.
Sometimes, because he was frequent in and out, sometimes the gate remembers license plates, and sometimes it opens and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes he would just follow people in. The gate kind of stays open for a while. But yeah, sorry.
But on this day, you weren't concerned about him coming over.
No, I knew he was coming.
Okay. And when he came over, your mother and Emerson went to the park.
I believe they were headed there. I'm not sure. I think they were down the driveway or on the sidewalk, something like that. They were on their way there.
You weren't so afraid that you wanted your mother to stay there and watch.
No, we were just packing to move.
Okay, so you weren't afraid.
I definitely didn't expect this to happen.
So it was of you that your mother left.
Yeah, at that time.
Okay. So if I heard you right during your direct, you said he bumped your shoulder twice. Body check, I don't know if that's what you called it. He walked into you.
All right, I want you guys to listen to this now. This is very interesting. I want you guys to listen to how Ashley describes what her estranged husband did that prompted her to shoot him to death, the father of her child. And this is a lesson. People need to learn lessons. There's no reason why a man in his 50s should be marrying and having babies with a 24-year-old woman. Your time has come and passed, buddy. And listen, I'm not talking crap. I'm getting up there too. There's nothing that you will have in common with somebody who's 24. 4 years, when they met, at the time when they met, 4 years prior, he was 50 years old. 4 years prior, she was 19, 20. She just got out of high school. She wasn't even old enough to finish college yet. You have nothing in common. There's no such thing as growing older in that situation. When you're in your 60s, approaching your 70s, she's literally in her prime. She's literally in her prime. She's literally 30 years old, 35 years old, when you're 60-something, approaching 70. When your body drastically changes, like it literally just goes over a hill and starts changing to elderly. This lady's still in her prime, still looking good, still firm and fit, still ready to go out there and do the things that young people want to do. And you can't keep up because Father Time has caught up with you, because all of us have our time. Every king has his reign and then he dies. That's the saying. Everybody has their moment and then it's over. I'm getting up there too. I'm not age shaming in any way. I wouldn't, at 40 years old, if I was single, I would never go look for a woman who's 20 something years old. Because we have nothing in common. Nothing. And we can't grow old together. She grows more beautiful and I grow older. But let's keep going.
With a box, right?
Yes.
And then at the end, you say he slapped you?
He hit me. I wouldn't know how to classify it. He struck me, he hit me.
Look, listen, people know what, unless you get knocked out, which is possible. If she said I lost consciousness, this testimony would be totally valid to me. Totally valid to me. She said I lost consciousness, because you can have memory issues when you lose consciousness. You can't tell me you don't know how he hit you. If you don't know whether it was a punch or a slap, which is possible, you'd still be able to say, I was struck in my face. I don't know if he punched me or if he slapped me, but I remember distinctly getting hit in my mouth. I remember distinctly getting hit in my head, in my temple, in my nose, in my ear, in my jaw. You can't tell me you don't remember how he hit you. You can't even describe where he hit you, but let's keep going. This gets more interesting.
Was his hand open or closed?
I don't remember.
Okay. And because of those things, you claim that you thought he was going to kill you.
He had never hit me before.
Okay.
Now, somebody in the comment section said, I think he was abusive based off of text messages. She just said on the stand that he never hit her before. He never hit her before. Now, there's other types of abuse like mental and spiritual and verbal abuse. I get that. But she just said on the stand, he had never hit her before. Let's keep going.
And you thought he was going to kill you.
He wouldn't let me leave. I tried to leave. He stopped me.
The question is, you thought he was going to kill you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I held it out in front of me first so he could see it. And I said, stop.
Judge, if I could have her step down so she can demonstrate.
This is interesting. Watch this.
If you could just come down.
It's going to be comical.
So Doug opens the door and does what?
She's very tall.
I'm standing in the doorway. Kind of like this. And he said, you're fucking done. And I held the gun out in front of me and said, stop. He got into this like fighting pose where he like turned sideways.
Look, she's going to call him a ninja, guys. She's literally going to call him a ninja and say he looked like a ninja. Let's keep going.
And he was like moving around with his like arms in his hands. And he started like inching forward towards me.
So he why do you call it a fighting stance?
He looks like a fighter.
Look at the prosecutor. You got to see the prosecutor.
I don't know, like a ninja or something, I don't know.
Okay, so he's standing there. He turns to like this and starts moving his arms around.
I'm sorry.
Well, show me. What was he doing?
The prosecutor's really good in this case, by the way. She did a bang-up job presenting this case to the jury. Not all prosecutors are made equal. She's a really good, experienced prosecutor. Let's keep going.
And like I really got like this, and he was like making like fighting motions. I don't know, I'm not a fighter, I don't know.
Okay.
It was scary.
Did he have his hands in fists?
Not at that point, they were like, I don't know.
Was he coming at you like this?
He lunged at me very quickly.
Okay, so he lunged. Was his fist up when he
I
lunged?
don't remember.
People, this is second-degree murder. You got the custody issue. You have the lies that she's told to get him separated from his child. You have her luring him there, even though she had an injunction for them not, that would prevent them from reconciling, that would show him that she's not going to reconcile, but yet she's still calling him over under false pretext that she wanted to reconcile. This is clearly second-degree murder. One might even say it could have possibly been premeditated first-degree murder, but this was not manslaughter, ladies and gentlemen. It absolutely was not manslaughter. You mean to tell me as a jury, you just watch her go, huh? You watch her do this in front of the courtroom and use this as a justification for shooting the man dead. And you're going to say, oh man, in the jury room, hey guys, he did go like this. We got to do manslaughter. What if he really was going to chop her? There's a possibility he was going to chop her, so we got to do manslaughter. We can't do second-degree murder, man. She said he did this. If he did this, we'd have did murder. But this is just too much. This is a bridge too far. Manslaughter. Man, listen, they don't make all prosecutors equal, and they certainly don't make all jurors equal. Some of these jurors will eat any bullcrap these defendants give them and just can't bear to send a pretty ballerina to jail for the rest of her life. I hope the judge does the right thing and sends her to 30 years in prison, because that's the only way we're going to get that true justice. That's the only way. I'm telling you guys, I've been in this business for a long time. Looks matter. Looks matter. This tall, statuesque woman with zero body fat, long, beautiful, flowing hair, and the ugliest crying face. And you gotta have a pretty face that's juxtaposed by the ugliest crying face. That's what gives you true sympathy. Because when they look at you, they're like, oh, she's beautiful. And then when you cry, oh my God, she's horrible. It makes them believe that the cry is genuine. Because how could somebody put on such an ugly face when they cry unless they absolutely mean it? I'm telling you guys, looks matter. She got manslaughter because she's a tall, pretty when she wants to be, statuesque ballerina. This woman was truly guilty of second-degree murder. Let's keep going.
So you start shooting, and he does what?
He kept coming at me.
Okay, so then you keep shooting again. And he falls down on his back.
His legs went up in the air.
Okay, where do his legs go?
In the air.
How high in the air?
I don't know.
Do they go over his head?
I don't know. It's like his feet slipped out.
Okay.
And his feet and his legs went up in the air.
This woman shot this man so many times, she had him looking like a cockroach in one of those Raid commercials. It's very sad stuff. And I make light just a little bit, but it's very sad. And the only comical part about it to me is the fact that the jury could not come back with a guilty verdict on second-degree murder. This woman certainly 100% deserved to spend the rest of her life in prison for what she did. She removed herself from her daughter. She could have got child support. She could have moved on to another man that tickled her fancy, maybe more than Doug did. She could have done any one of number of those things. She was not in any way bound to be with Doug. She was not in fear of losing her life from violence from Doug. He was not a stalker. He was not an abusive man. There's no evidence of it. We just watched while she gave her own testimony and said, Doug never hit me before. Doug never put his hands on me before. Was Doug a perfect man? Did Doug curse at her? Did this look like somebody? And listen, I don't espouse to domestic violence under any circumstances. I think domestic abusers are horrible people. But just off of what you just saw, ladies and gentlemen, did it appear to you that this is the most easy person to be with? Based off of her personality and based off of what we know and her murder, her propensity to kill, I think it's possible one could get frustrated with her and use a couple of F-bombs every now and then. She doesn't seem like the nicest person. No, but she doesn't deserve to be hit. She does not deserve to be mentally and physically and verbally abused. Nobody deserves that. But She doesn't seem like she's the type of person that's this innocent individual who was not toxic herself and probably was contributing to the verbal abuse as well. I'm not saying Doug was a perfect person. I don't know him. But what I know is that there's no evidence that Doug abused her. And since Doug never abused her, why did he choose this moment to put his hands on her, to get into this karate stance and chop her or something like that? That would then justify her to shoot him so many times that he flies back on his back and his legs raise up because he has so many bullets in him. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. And I think this was premeditated. So we're going to jump in here and we're going to check out the verdict for the Black Swan trial. And then after that, we're going to read some of these court documents that will help shed some light on what the jury was working with to help them come to this conclusion. Let's do it right now.
Foreperson.
Yes, we do.
Ma'am, has the jury reached a verdict?
Yes, we have.
Is the verdict unanimous?
Yes, it is.
Would you please hand the verdict form to the deputy? I need to check it, make sure it's in proper form. All right, the verdict appears to be in proper form. Madam Clerk, would you please publish the verdict?
So some people think that this eye batting is that of a battered wife, but I think she's just a psychopath. Look at her. She's like going nuts right now. Like, she's losing her mind. She's like, will they believe my lies? Will they let me off?
In the Circuit Court of the 12th Judicial Circuit in and for Manatee County, Florida, the State of Florida versus Ashley Benefield, case number 2020 CF 3014. Verdict. We, the jury, finds as follows as to the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter, a lesser included offense. Did Ashley Benefield actually carry a fire?
This is a mother of a baby girl, of a young child. No reaction. She knows she's going to spend a significant part of that child's life in prison. If she gets the max, by the time this child gets out of prison, the child will be well into their 30s. Remember, this killing happened in 2022. The child has to be like around, I think the child was born in 2017. Child should be around 6, 7 years old right now, 7 years old. Yeah, the child should be turning 7 this year. By the time you get out of prison, the child be 37 years old. If she gets the max, she has no reaction. That child would be married with children, with teenagers, possibly, depending on when the child makes a child of their own. If that child has a child at 20 years old, that child's child, her grandchild, be 17 years old by the time she gets out of prison. And look at her reaction. Nothing. Stone cold. Nothing. Not a bat of the eye. Not a jump of the lip. Nothing. Let's keep going.
Firearm? Yes. Did Ashley Benefield discharge a firearm? Yes. Did Ashley Benefield, as a result of discharging the firearm, cause death to Douglas Benefield? Yes. So say we all this 30th day of July, 2024, at Bradenton, Manatee County, Florida, Cheryl Foreperson.
All right. Where we at right now? 112. 112. All right, so we can cut that there, and then we're gonna go into the documents. And Crazy Lemitard is stuck on this disassociation thing, saying this is why victims don't speak out. I think that what you're saying is a bit of an abomination, because what you're doing is you're condoning murder. And we live in an organized society. We can't just go out there and just kill people because we don't like them. There are mechanisms in place that Ashley could have availed herself of to protect herself. She didn't have to call her abuser over to her house to help her move. She didn't have to kill him. She could have filed police reports. She could have reported his abuse. She never reported his abuse. She made outlandish accusations during a custody hearing that he was trying to poison her. If you guys have knowledge I don't have, there's no way for me to know everything. If she did make some police reports, I apologize. But there's things she could have did. She could have put herself into a domestic violence shelter to get away from him. She could have detailed the abuse as the reason why she wanted full custody of the child instead of just this poisoning that could not be substantiated. We live in an organized society. We have rules in our society. We can't just condone people deciding, hey, you karate chop me. That's what she described. I'm not mocking her. It may sound like I'm mocking. Maybe a little bit. But he came at me in a defensive stance like this. According to the prosecutor, she got to be mad at the prosecutor too, because the prosecutor certainly mocked her. The prosecutor said, oh, when he was like this, the prosecutor was extremely exaggerated with her movements. That's not a reason or excuse to shoot somebody. And she chose to shoot somebody when she had an opportunity to do something different. She chose not to do something different. So listen, I'm a law and order guy. If you come to court, you come to the police, you report abuse, you go through the system, the proper ways of doing things, we will lock you, the bad guy, up, and we will protect you. But you can't just decide you want to kill somebody. You can't decide you want to kill somebody. I'd never put my hands on a woman, but if I lost my mind and slapped somebody, I would like the cops to be called on me so I can go to jail and face the music for what I did. I'd hate for somebody to kill me when I could get help, and knowing myself, I'd probably realize that I was terrible for what I did and put myself in therapy and apologize profusely. That's not a reason to end my life. That's a reason to call me a horrible person and for me to face criminal charges, but that's not a reason to kill me and take me away from my children for the rest of my life. I hate to use myself as an example, but it is what it is. It's not a reason to kill somebody. She killed him because he did this. I feared for my life a million times when I was on the streets. I feared for my life when I was fighting a man who pulled out a knife and was trying to stab me. And I had my gun out, and my partner has both his hands on the knife, pulling the knife away from me as we're on the ground. And I have one hand on the knife, and I had the other hand on my gun with the gun to his head, telling him, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna blow your fucking brains out. Stop trying to stab me. Stop trying to stab me. But I refused to pull that trigger until I knew that that knife was going to touch my bulletproof vest. I gave him all of that deference. And guess what? My partner and I, but mostly my partner, was able to wrestle that knife away from him. And that man is alive to this day. Now, some of you may say, oh, well, you're a cop and you get paid to do that. You know, but I could have shot him. And it was a lawful shooting. And there was tons of people who were around watching, as people do. They don't help, they watch. And after it was done, people said, if I was you, I would have shot him. And if you would have shot him, everybody here would have said you were justified in doing it because we saw what he was trying to do to you. But thank God you didn't do it. That's what the people said to me. How often do the people say that? They're usually pointing fingers, saying, you police brutality, you terror. In this instance, they said, we support you. His brains would have been all over the place and they would have supported me. At least that's what they said. If they'd have changed their mind, I don't know. But I didn't. She didn't have to kill this man. She could have called 911. She could have fled. My understanding is that the child was with the grandmother. The child wasn't even home. She could have tried to flee. We could have seen some defensive wounds on her that she tried to flee and he refused to let her go. She could have did that. She could have barricaded herself into her room where she went and retrieved the gun. And let us see that he kicked the door down and then she shot him. Justified. I'm with you 100%. I'll be fighting for Ashley to go free if that's the case. She shot him multiple times until, according to her description, he was on his back with his legs up like a cockroach. This is not a domestic abuse victim. This is a cold-blooded murder. But you can believe whatever you want. Just like in the jails, There's always somebody, when I was working in the jails and I was listening to phone calls, doing investigations, reading inmates' letters, we called them mail watches. There's always somebody who's hitting up the mass murderer, hitting up the mass rapist, saying, I'm so intrigued by you. You're such an interesting person. I'd like to be your pen pal. And I'd like to send you money. There's always people in this world who are willing to support these people. I don't blame you. Believe whatever you want. That's what makes this country great. That's what makes this country great. The differences in opinions. I don't believe that she is a victim. She's a stone cold murderer. And guess what? Criminal justice system feels that way too. The jury, comprised of women and men, they feel that way too. It is what it is. But I just feel like it's a mockery of real victims. And I feel like it's an affront to our society because we do not condone people taking action in their own hands and killing people. It's unacceptable in our society. So before we wrap this up, guys, I want to take a moment and go through some of the court documents that the Strategiceyes research crew was able to obtain that really paints a picture of this tragic story. It really is tragic because, number one, we never want to see anybody die, and we never want to see a child without their parents. The real tragedy lies in the little girl that's been left behind by both of her parents. One parent is no longer with us, is deceased. The other one is probably going to spend a significant amount of time in prison for killing this little girl's father. And as this child grows up, this child is going to have mixed feelings, going to need a lot of community support, a lot of therapy, and a lot of family support to get through this tragedy, because effectively this child has lost both parents. I want to bring it in right now. We're going to start the video, the slideshow off with, this is Ashley Benefield. It's a booking photo. Let's keep going. This is a verdict form. We, the jury, find as follows. As the defendant in this case, check only one. And they check B, the defendant is guilty of manslaughter, a lesser offense included. And they said, if you find the defendant guilty of A or B, then you must answer all of the following questions. I want to know why they chose not to do murder in the second degree. But we'll figure it out, hopefully, if they decide to give some interviews. So they chose B, which was manslaughter, and it says, 1, did Ashley Benefield actually carry a firearm? The answer is yes. Did Ashley Benefield discharge a firearm? The answer is yes. And 3, did Ashley Benefield, as a result of discharging a firearm, cause death of Douglas Benefield? The answer is yes. So say we all on the 30th day of July, 2024, in Bradenton, Manatee County, Florida. Let's keep going. Big shout out to the Strategiceyes research crew. As you see our moniker on the bottom, they do great work. Let's keep going. Order for pre-sentence investigation. This is not a negotiated plea. She was found guilty by jury. As you can see, she's checked off over here. Withheld pending PSI. And under the provision of Florida Statute 921.231, we are hereby directed to conduct a pre-sentence investigation. And the report will be done in 10 days before the return date of TBS. Let's keep going. This is the county circuit and for Manatee County, Florida, commitment disposition. She's found guilty. She's been committed. She's remanded to custody pending sentencing. So she's going to be on manslaughter, still in a county jail until they sentence her to state prison. This is just a document that says we will stay. Cheryl, I don't know what that is. Question number 3 from jury. Okay, let's keep going. So this is notes from the jury. So this is saying that this is the 4-person saying that they will stay. In reference to stay and deliberate longer. They're unable to come to a unanimous verdict on count 1, which would be murder in the second degree, because there's some bleeding hearts in that jury who's like, oh my God, I don't know. Doug is a man, she is a woman. We may not be able to believe that she could just kill this man in cold blood. It is what it is. Let's keep going. The response is, do you want to come back to something, can't really understand, and serve your deliberations? I don't know. I'm not really good reading other people's script. It's just never been a big thing for me. I like very neat writing. Let's keep going. This is answers to juror inquiries during deliberations. Member of the jury, I have discussed your note with the attorneys. You have asked the following questions. Read the juror's notes. If I have not read your note correctly, please clarify your question and a follow-up note to the court. I am not able to answer this question because it asks the court to resolve a factual question that is within the province of the jury. Your decision must be based only on the evidence presented in the trial and the law that has been given to you. If you have any other specific questions, please send another note and I will see if I can answer it. Let's keep going. More jurors' notes. Dr. Quintella's testimony, defense recall, was his description of Doug based on his observation, or Ashley told him what, something about alpha male, over the top, not genuine. Okay, so they're asking questions. So we're going to skip this. His disposition with Doug based on his observations. Okay, so repeat of that. Let's keep going. Introduction to final instructions. Member of the jury, I thank you for your attention during this trial. Please pay attention to the instructions I am about to give you. Okay, just more notes. Ashley Benefield, the defendant's case, has been accused of a crime of murder in second degree. Statement of charge. Introduction to homicide. So let's read what the jury instruction was. It's very important in reference to second degree murder. So Ashley Benefield is accused second degree to murder in second degree. Murder in second degree includes the lesser crime of manslaughter, which is unlawful. However, killing that was excusable or that was committed by the justifiable use of force is lawful. If you find Douglas Benefield was killed by Ashley Benefield, you will then consider the circumstances surrounding the killing in deciding if the killing was murder in the second degree or manslaughter, or whether the killing was excusable or resulted from justifiable use of deadly force. Okay, justifiable homicide, the killing of human beings. So we're going to go to, so we're going to leave that because we don't need to know that. We know it's not justifiable. We want to go to an object not designed to inflict violence. I want to go to see if I can get the second degree. Here we go. Murder in the second degree. To prove the crime of murder second degree, the state must prove the following three elements beyond a reasonable doubt. And you know, every state has different definitions of these crimes, and sometimes what might be second degree in one state might just be considered a manslaughter, it might be murder in the first. I think murder in the first is uniform around the country, that it's premeditated. But I'm curious to see what their murder in second, because I'm like, why didn't they find her murder second? And I got to be honest with you, I don't really know exactly what murder second is. So that's my own ignorance that I should have checked before making that statement. Now I'm going to know what murder in second is. We're all going to know. And we're going to figure it out and see if the jury was still wrong in their verdict, in my opinion. Okay, so to prove the crime of murder in second degree, the state must prove the following three elements beyond a reasonable doubt. 1, Douglas Benefield is dead. Easily proven he's dead. 2, the death was caused by the criminal act of Ashley Benefield. We got to figure that out. She did use a firearm, but I believe it was a lawfully owned firearm, if I'm not mistaken. And number 3, there was an unlawful killing of Douglas Benefield by an act eminently dangerous to another and demonstrated depraved mind without regard to human life. An act includes a series of related actions arising from and performed pursuant to a single design or purpose. An act is eminently dangerous to another and demonstrating a depraved mind if it is an act or series of acts that a person of ordinary judgment would know is reasonably certain to kill or do serious bodily injury. So shooting, she knew that shooting him was going to kill him. She knew that getting the gun could possibly lead to her shooting him. So I don't see how they didn't get to the second degree. So in order to convict of murder in the second degree, it is not necessary for the state to prove that the defendant had an intent to cause death. So she did not have to want to kill him. She could have just wanted to warn him or incapacitate him, and it's still murder in the second degree. Wow. An issue in this case is whether Ashley Benefield did not have a depraved mind without regard to human life because she acted in the heat of passion based on an adequate provocation. In order to find the defendant did not have a depraved mind without regard for human life because she acted in the heat of passion based on adequate provocation, A, there must have been a sudden event that would have suspended the exercise of judgment in an ordinary reasonable person. A reasonable person would have lost normal self-control, would have been driven by blind and unreasonable fury. I don't see that in this case. Could this have been that action, the chopping ninja movement that Ashley Benefield described and called it a ninja movement and described it to us in front of the jury? Could that have been the action that made her lose her mind and then kill him? Very interesting stuff. I just don't buy it. I think the jury is wrong on this. There's a reasonable amount of time for a reasonable person to cool off. I think she had that a reasonable amount of time. The time it took for her to go and get the gun. She could have left the house. A reasonable person would have cooled off before committing the act that caused death. I don't know. Ashley Benefield was in fact so provoked that she did not cool off before she committed that act that caused the death of Dudley Benefield. I just don't buy it, guys. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think it's bullcrap. I think this was we don't need to read manslaughter. We already know what it is. I mean, we can go back. Guess so. To prove the crime, manslaughter, the state must prove that the following two elements of reasonable doubt, beyond reasonable doubt. Benefield is dead. That's proven. And two, Ashley Benefield intentionally committed an act or acts that caused the death of Douglas Benefield. I think if you can find manslaughter, you can find second-degree murder. It just seems to jive that way to me. If you could find the manslaughter, you could find the second-degree murder. So we're going to the weeds here. What I'll do is I'll post this stuff inside of our Patreon. So if you actually want to read the rest of this, you can go ahead to the Patreon and you can check that out. And you can get into the weeds with the Strategiceyes research group, get into the weeds with that and figure it out. But certainly, I think the jury got this one wrong, guys. But that's where we're at with Ashley Benefield. So I hope you guys have received some relevant information to kind of bring you up to speed as to why we're at where we're at on this Black Swan murder trial. I hope that Ashley Benefield gets the max sentence, which is 30 years, but I'm willing to accept whatever the court gives because I believe in the criminal justice system. So anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this show. I want you to like and subscribe, join the channel. Make sure that you at least comment in the comment section and say where you're calling from so you can get us into that algorithm. But make sure that you subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel. Make sure you hit that like button and make sure that you engage in the channel and help us out. I'll see you guys on the next one. Strategic is out of here. Peace.